So you've let go. Now, don't put a time restriction or limitation on when the answer should be there. That starts to mess everything up. Let it come in, timeless. You see, you are timeless. All of your answers are timeless. Don't say, I need that answer in 5 minutes. Because now you put a spin or an imbalanced energy on the question to begin with. Go timeless here. And some of you are saying, but what if it takes a year? Well, what if it does take a year? You still will have the answer, won't you? Don't worry about time here in the Shambhala Service Center. Be timeless. The answers will come in. So Shambhala, the question was asked in our Shaud last month, the question about darkness. Someone asked the question, said, what is the difference between darkness and evil? And in a short way, we responded and said, darkness is a natural state of being. Darkness can be called many other names. Negative. It can be called the feminine energy. It can be called the other energy, the other side, whatever name you want to give it. It is just part of the equation. It could be the 0 compared to the 1 of lightness, or it could be the 1 compared to the 0. The darkness and the light, in the purest sense, are not locked into their energy structures. They change, you see. They change back and forth, darkness to light. They change their personalities. So the question was asked, darkness versus evil. And we said darkness is a natural state of being. It is part of duality. It is a dimension in itself. It is the partner and the lover of the light. And they switch roles back and forth. Evil, which some of you know would be live spelled backwards. Evil is an imbalanced dark, where there is so much focus on the dark, so much focused on what you would call energies of perhaps anger or hate or emptiness, lack of love, whatever we want to define it. It is an imbalanced dark. It is putting a focus on the dark and trying to ignore the light. So the question came up from our dear Linda. So what is it when there is imbalanced light? And because we were, trying to get through as many questions as possible, we deferred. But we would like to talk about that for a moment now, because it is a very important aspect of being a multiple dimensional and a multiple potential being on earth. You have to understand the dynamics of light and dark. Light. You're light workers. You work in the light, eliminating the dark from the universe. That is the biggest crock, Shambhala. That is imbalanced also. We have a word for it here. It doesn't really relate to any human word, but in the best translation we can provide is, we call it anast. Anast. That means an imbalance to the light. The imbalance to the light, or anast, is a denial of the dark. It is a denial of half of yourself, if not more. There are many, many New Agers. We're laughing here because Cauldre he's shaking his head at us. He says, now we're going to antagonize all the New Agers, but they need a bit of antagonizing, you know. It is time that they get off of their rather soft thrones, you see. There is also an imbalance to the light, and we have to laugh when we hear about the warriors of the light. Well, what are you battling? You're going to go off and battle the dark? They will win because they are stronger, you see. And because you're picking up your sword, they will pick up theirs also. And now you have a true battle going on. Now you have, in spite of all of your words of peace and love and all of these other things, your denial of the dark creates the battle in the first place. The dark is simply asking to be acknowledged. You see, now, this is a tough issue for some because of the overlay of dark. Overlay of dark. Dark has gotten a bad rap, you see. From the churches, from everything. You can't be dark. Dark is often equated with evil. And it's not. It's simply an imbalanced version, unstable version of darkness. There's nothing wrong with darkness. So Shambhala, you can be imbalanced to the light. So imbalanced that it causes your own fortitude to go soft, and it causes you to talk in these esoteric, lofty words about peace on earth, but not really understanding what the dynamics are. You want to save the world without having compassion for the world. Generally, when we see a person imbalanced to the light, one of the first things we recognize is their lack of compassion, oddly enough. You would think the dark would have the lack of compassion, but it's the light. The imbalanced light, thinking that everything has to be saved and they're the only ones that can save it. What happens when a person is imbalanced to the light is they become so airy, etheric, ungrounded, intangible, that they're no longer even efficient. They have all these fluffy concepts that really aren't practical, really don't move energy at all. The imbalanced light is pushed by energy and tumbled around by energy rather than being truly effective at moving energy. So we want to address this overlay of the perceptions of the dark. Now, several years ago at our annual Shambhala gathering, we talked about the darkness is your divinity. It was the toughest one we've ever had to get through, Cauldre and a few of you. Opening up to say that the darkness is simply the companion of the light. Neither is right or wrong. They have been lovers. They have been mates. They have filled in for each other. They have been the mirrors that have allowed you to look at who you are. Can you get to the point in your evolution where you can look at dark and light as the same? Neither one good, neither one bad. They simply are. They're expressions. The dark helps to spin the light, Shambhala. It moves the light. The light helps to illuminate new areas, but it takes the dark to spin it. It takes the dark to ground it. We're not talking about dark evil, dark bad, dark violent. We're talking about the core energies. Every once in a while, as we explained a long time ago, the dark and the light trade roles. You see, the light says, I want to experience now what it is like to be the dark. The dark wants to experience the illumination of the light. So they switch roles. Generally, this role switching between your personal light and dark has taken place in between lifetimes. It's generally not been advisable to do it while you were embodied. You see, there are cases of it, and Andra, Norma, can tell you more about this. What happens when role reversal happens when a person or a spirit is embodied in physical form in an incarnation? That'll throw everything off. So generally, your reversal, and this is not, somebody's asking here, is this reverse polarity? In a sense, not really. That is a different issue. This reversal of roles takes place in between lifetimes. Now, for those going through a very intense spiritual ascension process or spiritual evolution, it will happen while you're in this body, you see. It has happened to every one of you, where you have the switching back and forth of the dark and the light. And this tends to throw off everything in your reality. This is the point where you generally lose jobs and mates and everything else that you've balanced and brought into your life. But now you switch roles. But it is different than the past. They switch on each other so you can experience that, so you can see yourself from the new opposite. And then they come back, they meld. They meld together. What is happening right now for so many of you as this melding takes place, you see the dark and the light will always maintain a certain degree of their own identity. Even when they meld together, there will be an awareness that once I was light, once I was dark. you see. So light and dark don't necessarily go away. They just find a new way to dance together. But what happens when they remeld, see, you've all gone through this role reversal, the light-dark reversal in the past 5 or 6 years of time. We know it feels like you've gone through it many, many times, but you haven't. It is only can be handled one time in a physical lifetime. Trust us. You went through this reversal, and now they're coming back together. Now, think in terms of an eclipse, you see. A lunar eclipse, a solar eclipse. When you have one element passing in front of the other, temporarily blocking or shadowing the other, you see. Almost like a reverse shadow. That is what's happening with you right now in your lives. You're integrating, melding, and marrying your dark and light. Now, don't go running out of this room and telling the general public that you've married your dark and light, because they won't understand. The stigma of dark is so strong that they can't possibly let themselves go there. They're in their own battle with their light and dark right now. You know what that's like. You've gone through that in this lifetime, a few others as well. But you're reintegrating them. Now you have a type of soul eclipse going on. Not solar, but a soul eclipse going on right now. The dark and the light melding back together, but almost casting a reverse shadow, you see. So while this is happening, and you wonder sometimes why there's all this stuff in your life, why can't things just settle back down? But it's a process you asked for, a process that you want, a process that you would be disappointed with if you didn't go through with it. If you came back to our side right now, you'd say, but why didn't you encourage me to continue? I was almost there. It was remelding back together. That's what it is happening right now. So it is very appropriate during this time of a soul eclipse of dark and light. A soul eclipse, by the way, that instead of them separating back again, they meld together. At this time of soul eclipse, we talk about the potentials, the shadows, you see, that are created. Behind the eclipse of the dark and the light within you coming together, behind the eclipse are then many, many potentials. Sometimes difficult to put into words, but while you always had nearly infinite potentials to choose from in your life, the ones that were more within reach or grasp were somewhat limited, you see. The ability to bring in a whole different type of potential was limited. It was there, but it was beyond the conscious understanding or the ability of the biology to truly bring it in. But with this soul eclipse that's taking place in your life, the number or potential of potentials is now closer. The ability to bring in things that would, a year or two ago, would have seemed impossible, incredulous, now are possible. This is all as a result of the soul eclipse. The number of shadows or potentials that are now within reality's grasp are far, far grander. Far grander. When we sat down with Cauldre and with you and channeled the silent prayer, which was given earlier today. Silent prayer is the prayer of potentials. We called it that at first, and Cauldre had no concept of what we were talking about, so we had to change the name. The silent prayer. The silent prayer basically says everything is already in my reality. Everything is already here. I need only to accept it, to bring it in to my conscious reality. The love that I seek is already in my life. I just need to open the door and let it in, rather than sitting complaining about why I don't have it. The abundance that I choose in my life so that I can do this work, so that I can be a living, wealthy example of spirit on earth is already here, you see. Some of you say, but where? What is there? It is here. It is a potential that you weren't focusing on, that you weren't realizing, but it is there. The health of your body. The silent prayer says your body is already healed because the potential, the shadow for the healed body is already there. You have had every one of these within you all this time. They are here now, Shambhala. The silent prayer is a prayer of potentials. Maybe we were to take a look at putting that as a subtitle to the silent prayer. Maybe when Shambhala does the silent prayer, which is not a prayer of asking or begging, it is a prayer of realization and acceptance. I realize that my life is abundant in every way. I realize that I am in every way. Perhaps Shambhala would be the prayer of potentials, where you don't have to ask for anything, you just have to open the doors for it to come in. It's an amazing thing. We talked in our last Shaud about shadows and potentials. We said that humans tend to live a very singular life, hardly even dualistic, more singular, a singular expression of themselves, a singular path that they've been on and continue to stay on. Shambhala is learning that it is more than singular. Shambhala is learning that through the energy of imagination, you can open up to all these other things. You can bring them in through the portal, the crystalline portal that leads directly into this now reality that comes into your now moment. But what are the blocks? What is holding you back? Why doesn't it seem to work? Well, first of all, you're trying too hard. You're trying to force it in and you're trying to figure it in. You're trying to, actually, some of you con it in and manipulate it in. And it can't be. It is a realization. It is in itself its own belief system. It is an overlay. Absolutely. It is a belief that there is more to you than you. It is also a truism, but it is a belief. So it's about allowing yourself to believe that, allowing yourself to get outside of the box that you've been in. But to do it without struggling and pushing and fighting. Another thing that definitely holds it back are vows, oaths, and promises that you've made to yourself. Every one of these vows and oaths and promises, in this lifetime or from past lifetimes, serves as a type of barrier or blockage, a stone in the road or a boulder in the road, or a nail that you nailed into the wall of your soul to hold yourself in. A vow that you would never deal in the dark arts. My gosh, why not? Oh, you abuse them. Yes, we've heard about that before. It's time to get over that. Some of you said, but I was a witch, I was a sorcerer. I was influenced by the dark. Rethink dark, Shambhala. Yes, but because of the type of magic that I carried at one point, others abused it. That's true, but you didn't. Oh, some of you say, but yes, you did abuse it, but now it is time to move beyond that. It is time to take that nail out of the door of your soul. The nail that you use to keep yourself shut in and limited. You felt such guilt and anguish over what you did. You said, I will never do that again. Bang, bang, bang. Nailed that in. You just limited yourself. You just shut off potentials and probabilities and possibilities of your soul. You said, but I killed another human. Yes, you did. Not a good thing. You know better now. You're not going to do it. And you know what? They're back on Earth. They probably don't know you, and they're probably not holding it against you. But you nailed another board in place over the house of your soul, saying, I will never do that again. You felt guilty about abusing power because you saw what it did to you. You saw what it did to your spirit. You saw what it did to others. So bam, 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 you nailed another board to block off the doors and the windows of the house of your soul. All of these things, Shambhala, over and over again. We've released a lot of them. We've taken a lot out, but there's still some there. There's some that are embedded so deep that you can't even see them. Some that you actually hid. You were very tricky, you know. Very tricky. You said, I don't ever want to do that again. It was the worst thing I've ever done. I don't ever want to do that. I don't want to ever lead an army of warriors into the battlefield because I saw the blood that was spilled and I saw the lives that were taken and I saw the families that suffered for no good at all other than what someone told you was a war for God. You see, some of you have this very vow or oath in you, and you, after that lifetime, you said, never again, and I'm going to ensure that I never do this again because I'm going to bury that nail. I'm going to board up that part of my soul, myself. I'm going to bury that nail, and I'm going to imagine it's not there, even if I go looking for it someday, if I go searching for it someday, trying to open it up. Or somebody's trying to trick me into going into my soul and opening up parts that are best left covered up. I'm going to imagine that it is not there. I'm going to give myself the overlay, the hypnosis. The strongest hypnosis of all is to the self. I'm going to give myself that so I never, ever will find that nail. You see. Now you're at an interesting point. The nail is there, you know. That board over the door of your soul is there. What are you going to do? What are you going to do with those vows and oaths that were buried so deep? The ones that said, I will never allow myself to have an abundance of money again because it turned me into a rotten person. Yes, you were. But you're not going to repeat it, Shambhala. Consciousness, your love has allowed you to transcend. Do you realize right now, just take a moment to feel it as we sit here in the service center. Do you realize if you had a tremendous amount of abundance in your life right now, what it would feel like? Just feel it for a moment. Oh, now stop that. One of you just said you would give it all away to everyone. Now stop that. Enjoy it yourself first. Imagine. Well, yes, you're right. You're absolutely right. You all of a sudden realize you don't need that much. You're right. And all of a sudden you realize that if you have this tremendous flow of abundance coming into your life, you also realize that has to be a flow out. No sense in hoarding it or hiding it. No sense in using it for fear purposes, thinking the world's going to come to an end. If the world comes to an end, be the first one to get out. Guaranteed. Think about that. Why suffer? Leave early. So, Shambhala, you have this flow of money coming in. Feel it for a moment. Feel what it is like. Feel what it is like to finally have energy back in your life. Feel this potential. And yes, you're right. It has to flow in and flow out. It's a natural ebb and flow, a natural cycle. It means using it appropriately. Perhaps you want to build a center. Perhaps you want to simply invest in the economy. 5 cars. Perhaps you want several homes. Now, look at what this is doing. That nail is sitting there. That nail is so tight in there. And you're saying, but this sounds so selfish. I don't need all these things. Shambhala, let go. Let these limitations off. We know, and you know, you're not going to go crazy with this. You're not going to go and do things that are not appropriate for yourself or for others. It'll be balanced, you see. It has to be balanced. Why? Because you're understanding the light and dark. You're bringing them together. You're doing a soul eclipse. You're marrying the two. Money doesn't ever have to be out of balance. Relationships never out of balance. Love, sex, food, all of these things, never out of balance. Because you've chosen to come here. By the way, some of you worry. You say, well, but I'm coming into balance, I'm learning these things, I'm truly ready to accept the gifts and the joy into my life, but what if I slide backwards? There's a spiritual physics that almost makes it impossible. Not totally, but almost makes it impossible. Because you reach a certain level of enlightenment, you cannot erase enlightenment, you see. You cannot erase it. So you're not going to slide backwards. You're not going to go do evil, dark things. You're not even going to do imbalanced light things. There's be a balance in it. And you've also asked us to help ensure that you don't slide backwards, that we come in and whap you on the backside a few times, if you do. And we will. We love doing that. We love doing it, actually, because if you haven't noticed by now, as you go, Shambhala goes. As Shambhala goes, you go, you see. So many of you are feeling the energies of this Shambhala entity in your own life. It comes in to support you and serve you and assist you. But you can also feel when there is when there is a disturbance in the Shambhala force. You can feel when another Shambhala is having a difficult time. Perhaps you don't even know their name. But you can feel you are yourself, you're part of a group. You are your own consciousness and you are a group consciousness, as long as you're choosing to be that way. So it behooves us as well to work with you, because as you go, so we go. We are family. We are a group. We are Shambhala. So what else is holding you back from this whole concept of potentials, new potentials brought forth? Well, there are very heavy overlays coming from outside of you, coming from other people, your co-workers, people you meet on the streets. There are particularly heavy overlays from television and the media, because they are feeding everyone else. Oh, media is the greatest feeding mechanism that we possibly know of, because it can feed many at one time. It feeds realities and belief systems, and it supports of the manifestation of beliefs all over the world. Belief systems are very, very heavy. Those affect you, because while you are feeling or experiencing one thing within, the outside world is trying to tell you, no, it's not this way at all. You have to be able to transcend that, to be able to understand. It is time to disconnect from those feedings. It's time to let go of their version of reality. So let go of that, Shambhala. That is something else that is holding you back. Your own internal belief systems. How can this be possible? We've heard several of you say, Tobias, wonderful theory, show me, prove it. We can't do that, because your reality is based on your belief systems, and even if we did it, then your next thing would be, well, you did it, but that wasn't me, you see. It has to come from within you. Your own belief systems about the nature of reality need a bit of exploring. You need to take a look within. What are your belief systems about the nature of reality? Do you have to touch it and feel it and smell it in order for it to be real? Or can you accept the imagination? Can you accept the other probabilities and possibilities? You are a very complex being. You are part human, part angel. You are part God and certainly part devil. You have all of these different aspects of you. Once in a while, you just need to come in the Shambhala Service Center. Get out of the confusion and the noise. You see, there's a very special energy here. It doesn't have the, what you would call, the noise level of your cities, the noise level of earth and humanity. You can come in here and get beyond that. Go through some of the rejuvenation. So Shambhala, in a sense, let's to help you understand the concepts, let's give an analogy. Let's talk about a car, since we're in the service center. A car. Now, imagine a car, your vehicle. The car is nothing but a physical thing, a shell made up of steel and tires, some plastic, and if you're fortunate enough, a little bit of leather. The car, in a sense, doesn't have a mind. It simply is there, much like your physical body. Your physical body is a vehicle, your vehicle. But now, let's say we add a brain to the car. Let's give the car a brain. You don't have that in your physical reality, but let's create now a car that has a brain. The brain now of this car will help it to get from one place to the other. The brain will help the car know now how to get to the store, how to get to the office, how to turn right and how to turn left. The brain will accumulate and collect information on directions and routes, but also things to do and not to do. You see, part of the brain's function is to protect the car and to protect the identity of itself. We now have a brain car, and it wants to maintain at the very core of itself. Intuitively, it knows to protect and maintain itself. So now the brain takes on the responsibility of things to do and not do. The brain knows that you don't step on the gas pedal and go 80 miles an hour around a very sharp curve. It protects itself. It's a wonderful thing. You gave yourself a brain. The brain collects and stores information. It is a database. And it also has the ability to make judgments based on things that have happened in the past. It has no way of making judgments of things it hasn't experienced before. The brain in itself is very limited that way. Collects data, makes judgments. But it doesn't have the ability to predict into the future. As a matter of fact, if you start talking new experience or future or something it has never gone through before, the brain puts up an energy of fear. It doesn't know. It is protecting the car self now. So it puts up fear just like you do. Most humans actually operate in primarily what we would call body-brain consciousness. Just like a car now with a brain protecting itself. Most humans are simply protecting themselves. They're storing data, learning how to get through each day, protecting and defending itself. So now let's take your car. It now has a brain. It's got some smarts to it. Knows how to do certain things. Knows how to get around and protect itself. Now let's add some feelings to it. Wow, a car with feelings. You see, in a sense, before the brain car didn't care about feelings. It only cared ultimately about preserving its identity. It knew that intuitively, but now it's got feelings. It can feel pain. Now, brain says, oh, pain. When another car hits me, it hurts. It doesn't feel good. If there are parts that are wearing out, I can feel that now. Before, I just knew that they were wearing out. It had no particular effect on me. I was indifferent other than protecting, maintaining the identity. But now, I've added a new depth. I can actually feel it. I actually have good car days and bad car days. Actually, with my feelings, I've begun to notice there's some nice-looking cars over in the other end of the parking lot. That little Miata is mighty attractive today. You see, now the car has feelings and it begins to operate in a whole different way, emotions and feelings and awarenesses. The car now has a certain level of awareness. It adds a new dimension. Many humans operate in body, brain, and low feelings. We call them low vibration feelings. A certain degree understanding or awareness of pain and feeling of what pleases them, what makes them happy, what makes them sad, you see. So, most of humanity is in those levels of either body-brain or body-brain somewhat feeling basis. Now, let us add spirit to the car. Spirit. Oh, imagine what that does. Spirit is purpose. Spirit is awareness. Spirit is I am. The car now realizes that it is a car. It has its own personality, its own identity. It has a body and a brain and some feelings, but now it is truly complete. With spirit added to this vehicle, now there is meaning, now there is purpose, not just survival, not just avoiding pain and seeking pleasure, but there is the purpose of evolving and expanding, growing and creating. Now, with the spirit entered into the car also takes on a whole new aspect, a whole new understanding. It realizes that it can recreate itself over and over again. It can recreate itself going from being a Chevy Lumina, and now it can recreate itself as a Mercedes, to use a few of your overlay examples. It can create itself as a Jeep. It can recreate itself as a taxi cab. The spirit in the car understands creation and recreation. Then the spirit says to itself, if I created myself once, I can create myself and recreate myself over and over and over. You see, there are 4 levels of operation, and we've just reversed engineered, basically, the human angel. We started with the body and we went to the spirit. In your case, it was the other way. Spirit that took on feeling and emotion, that took on brain, that took on body, you see. But we want to have you to understand how each one of these layers work, how when adding a brain to a body, it changes the whole composition. When adding feeling to the brain and the body, it changes everything. Adding spirit is the ultimate. It adds the ability to understand self as self, have an awareness of self, have purpose in self. The purpose not just to survive, not just to live, but to drive like hell. To feel the wind against the windshield, to see the beautiful panoramic views. The spirit helps it to understand joy, fulfillment, creation, all of these things. You are these 4 elements put together now. You're beginning to understand your spirit slowly, but you're beginning to understand. One of the other blockages, Shambha, the biggest blockage of all, you've been operating in the body, in the brain, and to an extent the feeling levels or dimensions. You've been removed from spirit. Spirit has been with you. Even though you've been looking out there, spirit has been there. Now let's bring in spirit into this mix. It is the you. It is the I am. It is the awareness. It is the part that knows no death. You see, spirit cannot know death. Ever. Ever. There is no death in the heart of spirit. It is recreation. Recreating, reinventing yourself over and over. One of the biggest blockages is the different agendas, the human agenda versus the spiritual delight, the spiritual purpose, the spiritual presence. You've been asking for all of these things in your life to satisfy the car, to try to fix the wheels, to try to take the tears out of the upholstery, to try to correct the rust, try to make the engine sputter a few more miles. Your focus, Shambra, humans, has been on repairing the car. And it's time to reinvent the car, recreate the car, and stop trying to rebuild it. The fear has been death. The fear has been finality. You've been operating in the three, what we would call lower levels, or basic levels, of trying to always maintain the integrity of the car, trying to preserve and protect it. So your agenda for making the car just a little shinier, a little faster, making the car a little better than someone else's, is not necessarily consistent with the desire of the soul. You've been removed from your soul because you've been trying to focus on the basic things of keeping that old car running. You see, Shambra? There's been a disconnect between you and soul. You've been crying out for things that perhaps really weren't that important to the soul. Ultimately, the soul wants simply to expand and to recreate over and over again. The aspect that you hold on so tightly to in your life, the aspect of you, the human sitting here in the chair, wanting just a few more years of life on earth, doesn't really matter to the soul. Doesn't care. That part of yourself isn't concerned about things like that. Sometimes that part of you which you blacked out knows far better, knows sometimes it is time to end the life in order that it can recreate itself. Dear Melanie, the one who passed away recently, the one who was the teacher for Cauldre, understood that quite well and understands it right now. Sometimes the soul just wants to recreate itself. Well, part of her, of course, wanted to repair the body where the cancer was coming in. But she had to connect with her soul. What is the real purpose? What is the real meaning of this? And the soul said, it's time that we reinvent ourselves. That old self, that old you is tired out. We can do a much better job. New models are out now. We can do a much better job. So you see, the biggest blockage of all has been what you consider to be your agenda, your desires, versus the soul desire. We're going to put these together. We're going to bring them back together. We're going to put them into an eclipse together, a soul eclipse. The complete understanding. You see, you think your soul knows everything your humanness wants. It doesn't, because you've shut it out. You've barricaded it. You've had so many vows and oaths and promises. You've cut out soul and self. And let's bring them back together now. Oh, they are all part of the same indeed. But you've created an artificial separation. Let's bring them back together. Let's breathe in for a minute the soul, the self, that part of you that loves to create, that loves to recreate, that loves the expression of life, whether it is in physical body or out. In a sense, the soul, your true being, has no desires or needs or agendas. It knows it's already there. This soul self is the part that understands every probability and potential already there. The part that sometimes you hear crying at night is your soul. Because you choose not to see that it is already there, that you're already there. So Shambra, in the service center right now,